The story of BHRIGU. Sandy suggested, since we've apparently found a BHRIGU scroll, perhaps we should learn a little more about him and his interests. At least the secrets from this world he may have possessed. Dick threw a couple of large logs on the fire as Sandy began his tale. This is the story of a sage so great he could judge the Trimurti. Cheesy gasped, oh my, not the Trimurti. The three big guys and the girls laughed at his antics. They'd all been big Cheesy fans since they were teenagers together. Over BHRIGU's 2 lifetimes, he got into some serious fights with some very powerful entities, including the Trimurti and the fire god Agni, to mention just a few. His father was Brahma, both times he was born. During the recreation of the earth, between yugas, Brahma creates various beings to assist him with the repopulation of the freshly ravaged planet. The playing board is reset for the next yuga. Brahma creates 10 Manasputras or mind-born sons, of which BHRIGU was one, as was the sage Vashishta, whom we all know. Each of these sons was born from a different part of Brahma's body. BHRIGU was created from the tvak or skin of Brahma. All of BHRIGU's brothers except Daksha took a spiritual path and became great sages. Meanwhile, his brother Daksha became a great warrior, married Prasuti. Prasuti was Manushya. She came from basic stock. Her father was Svayabhuva Manu, the first of the 14 Manas, the first man of a Yuga cosmogony. He was Manasaputra, or a mind-born son of Brahma, reputed to have divided the Vedas into 4 sections. Prasuti's mother was Kshatrupa, also a daughter of Brahma. According to the Brahma Purana, Kshatrupa was regarded as the first woman to be created by Brahma. The combination of marrying Manu, the first men, made their descendants Manushya, which is the term for mankind. When they were marrying off their 24 daughters, BHRIGU married his niece Khyati. Together they begot a very famous daughter of their own. They were the parents of Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and prosperity, and the wife of Vishnu. I'm not sure what that says about recombinant DNA. I interjected. Sandy continued, Daksha, his warrior brother, conducted a Brihaspati-stava yajna and invited all of the devas, rishis, and important entities to join in. BHRIGU was one of the top priests of the yajna. Daksha and Shiva were hostile to each other, so Shiva and Sati were not invited. Who is Sat? Dick asked. Sandy replied, Sati was the goddess of marital felicity and longevity and the first wife of Shiva, reincarnated as Parvati after her death. Prasuti, her mother, was Manushya. Daksha was her father and forbade her to marry Shiva, but eventually relented. This was a snub on her by not only not inviting her but snubbing her husband. Sati was so enraged that she went to the yajna site and committed suicide in the sacrificial fire. The Ganas, or Shiva's soldiers, were infuriated and started causing havoc. Some even killed themselves. BHRIGU created beings to counter the attacks of the Ganas. His creatures defeated the Ganas, who fled to Shiva and told him what had happened. Shiva created Virbhadra and Mahakali from his matted hair. They returned to the yajna, where they ravaged and killed many of the guests. Virbhadra threw BHRIGU on the ground while Manibhadra kicked him and plucked out his mustache hair. Nasty bunch, Shiva's crew. Cheesy noted. Sandy went on, after the yajna was destroyed and Daksha killed, all the gods prayed to Shiva to resuscitate Daksha. Shiva forgave them all and revived Daksha. In that realm, death isn't forever. BHRIGU did not escape for the part he played in the event. The curse included him, and his 8 sage brothers would be reborn in Chakshusha Manvantara. Millions of years apart. As a result of the curse, at the end of the first Manvantara, Vashishta, BHRIGU, and his other sage brothers passed away. They were transported to Janaloka, the heavenly realm of sages, where they can hang out between Brahma's creations or their own rebirths. Is this the wife of Shiva that created the lake at Nainital? Errol asked. Sandy replied, yes, after Sati's death, Shiva carried her body around the world. Her body parts fell to the ground at 51 locations, which are known as Shakti Pithas. All are sacred. The lake at Nainital is one such place. Is this where the practice of a wife burning herself on her husband's pyre comes from? I asked. No, the practice of Sati is unconnected with the goddess Sati. Sandy said emphatically. At the end of the Chakshusha Manvantara, Varuna and his wife hosted a massive Brahma yajna with all the eminent devas and rishis. Who was he when he was at home? Cheesy asked. Varuna was the god of the oceans and water and is credited with fathering many, many children, but in the case of BHRIGU, Vasishtha, and his other sage brothers, they were adopted. At the Brahma Yajna, Brahma fell in love with some damsels. Naturally, this caused his semen to be discharged. Brahma put it in the sacrificial fire, and one by one, the 9 sages were reborn from the fire. BHRIGU was adopted by Varuna and his wife Charsni. Sage Varuna told BHRIGU that Brahma was that from which beings originate, through which they live, and in which they re-enter after death. That is Brahma. That nature of reality and existence developed in BHRIGU an emphasis on introspection. Sandy said. Peel off the outer husks to reach and realize the innermost kernel of spiritual self-knowledge. Cheesy interrupted to paraphrase. When Rama interacted with Varuna in the Ramayana, Varuna arises out of the ocean, goes to Rama, told Rama to remember he is the soul of peace and love, wrath does not suit him. When he grew older, Bhrigu married Pulama, who soon became pregnant. One day, Bhrigu went out for his morning ablutions and left Pulama at home. A Rakshasa came to Bhrigu's house and Pulama welcomed the Rakshasa as a guest. She served him fruits, but the Rakshasa had different intentions. This Rakshasa was Pulaman, Pulama's ex-fiancée prior to Bhrigu. He decided to abduct her and take her back to his house. When he saw a sacrificial fire burning, he approached it and said, Agni, as the god of fire, tell me, hasn't Bhrigu stolen her from me? Isn't she rightfully mine? Agni was scared of both Bhrigu and Pulaman, but finally, Agni said, her father chose to marry her to Bhrigu. She's Bhrigu's wife now, not yours. Pulaman was enraged and assumed the form of a boar to carry Pulama away. During the escape, Pulama's child slipped out of her womb and fell on the ground. Divine rays illuminated from the infant boy. A very bright light, like the sun, was emitting from him and Pulaman was scorched. The child was named Chayavana, meaning fallen from the womb. He literally blazed like the sun, which overwhelmed the Rakshasa, who tried to run away, but he was burnt to death. Bhrigu was delighted at the birth of their first child, but he was enraged with Agni and cursed, Agni. You will become the consumer of all things. The angry Agni replied, I'm the link between men and gods. How will I fulfill those duties with the curse you have given me? Without fire, people on earth couldn't perform any yajnas or light up their houses. The gods were also in a plight because they needed yajnas from men to sustain them. The sages and gods went to Brahma and told him about the problem. Brahma called Agni and modified the curse. Even though he will consume everything, anything his flames touch will become pure, so his body will remain pure. Satisfied, Agni went back to his duties. Sandy paused to get comfortable again. Chayavana, the son of Bhrigu, was known for his rejuvenation through a special herbal paste, an Ayurvedic jam known as Kayavanaprasham. Like his father, he became a famous sage who was once so absorbed in practicing austerities that termites built up their mound all over his body, and only his eyes were left. He was even powerful enough to oppose the thunderbolt of Indra. He paused to reposition himself, then continued, many great sages gathered at the bank of the river Saraswati to participate in a Mahayajna, a very high Vedic mantra needed to decide which of the trinity of gods was preeminent. That god would be worthy of being the Pradanta, or master of that particular yajna. It was not an uncommon event, and the gods loved the attention. Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. Krista recapped, so we've got a bunch of holy guys having an annual popularity contest for their favorite god. Tough crowd tonight, Sandy G. Cheesy observed. Sandy continued, all the great and amazing sages alive at the time gathered at the predetermined site. They all agreed the task of testing each of the Trimurti would fall to Maharishi Bhrigu. Bhrigu was a Prajapati, or facilitator of creation required to be created by Brahma at the start of each new yuga. Bhrigu is Manasaputra or mind-born, but we know now, in his first life, he was created from Brahma's skin. That makes him more than just a ball of energy thrown to the earth with a chunk of DNA. Bhrigu was a compatriot of and lived during the time of Manu, the Hindu progenitor of humanity. A fine specimen of a man, if I do say so myself. If I remember my Hindu timeline correctly, we are currently in the 7th kalpa of 14 kalpas. Within each kalpa there are 71 chatur yugas, which each consist of the 4 yuga periods before they're flushed and restarted. Sandy taught us the world goes through the 4 yugas, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali, as man declines through his own self-destruction. I also knew that the current universe was ruled by the 7th Manu named Vaivasvata. He was the king of Dravida before the Great Flood. Warned of the flood by Matsya, the fish avatar of Vishnu, Vaivasvata built a boat to carry the Vedas, his family, and the 7 sages to safety. His first mate was a young fellow named Noah, I think. I thought to myself, Maharishi Bhrigu was a fine man, just misunderstood. To start the Mahayajna off, Bhrigu first visited Brahma at Brahmaloka. To test Brahma's patience, Bhrigu refused to sing his praise or prostrate before him. When he arrived, Brahma was reciting the Vedas and spending a little time with his lovely wife, Saraswati. Therefore, he completely ignored Bhrigu, who got angry and started to insult his father. That made Brahma angry, as sons often do, but when he realized his son was just testing him, he allowed him to pass. Sandy told us, paused to catch his breath, and then continued, Bhrigu left for Kailash, the home of Shiva. When he arrived, Shiva was having a conversation with Parvati, his significant other. He was infuriated by the intrusion, but was calmed by Parvati, whom, as we all know, calms him so well by stroking his ego. It's a good thing he wasn't having a Kali moment that day. Krista added. Sandy continued, the Maharishi then ran to Vaikuntha, the home of Vishnu, trying to locate him. To add insult to injury, Vishnu wasn't able to see Bhrigu because he was asleep on his Shishanaga. Again. You lazy sot. Bhrigu thought. Ticked off, Bhrigu kicked Vishnu on the chest to wake him up, because he was so enraged that Vishnu was constantly asleep on his Shishanaga. Vishnu woke up, rubbed the sleep from his eyes, greeted Bhrigu, and started massaging Bhrigu's feet. He asked him if he had hurt his foot by kicking him in the chest. In the process of massaging his foot, Vishnu destroyed the third eye of Brigu that was on his foot. That eye symbolized his ignorance and his ego. Once the eye was destroyed, Brigu became aware of his egotistical outbursts. He begged forgiveness of Vishnu, who readily forgave him. "Relax, Brigu, I forgive you." "No worries, mate," Vishnu told him. "I didn't know Vishnu was an Aussie." Errol interrupted and we all laughed at Sandy's interpretation. Sandy continued, that made Brigu declare Vishnu the greatest god amongst the triumvirate of gods. Compassion. That's why Vishnu's the best. Many today would see compassion as weakness. Dick noted skeptically. Brigu needed a break from pissing everyone off, so he decided to write a book on astrology which he called the BHRIGU Samhita. Sandy noted and paused for a drink. Brigu collected birth charts and wrote full life predictions for a growing entourage. The BHRIGU Samhita was the first book on predictive astrology. Dates determined from astrological positioning in the Mahabharata can indicate a time from 9500 BCE, or to an even earlier cycle of the planets. Remember, the yugas are millions of years in duration. That book was already well known to Darla, Magda, and Krista. Richard was planning to spend a month with the Celtradats in Moldavia to understand the astrology revealed in the Sanskrit writings he had translated to that point. The date could play an important part in some of their rituals by making sure the planetary bodies were in alignment. While much of the BHRIGU Samhita was destroyed over the ages, a few parts of the book are said to still exist in Hoshiarpur, a city in the Punjab. Richard told me that he may have located a fellow who has a page or two for sale. Rick and I will be checking that out when we return to India. Sandy told us.